Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Tiara, aka Crafting on Ilum, to discuss the fourth episode from Skeleton Crew titled Can't Say I Remember No at Attin. Try not doing that in a pirate accent. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. All right, everybody, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. Yes, we have another wonderful Skeleton Crew episode for discussion today, and of course, we have kind of again similar to last week, a not new guest to Force Ghost Conversations. First time fully on the show in terms of long form discussion content rather than being interviewed on site at a convention. Yes, we have Tiara, who you may know as Crafting on Ilum on all the social platforms, basically. But she has a wonderful store featuring a bunch of Star Wars related merchandise on there. And we will have a link to that store in the episode description where you can check out all the stuff that she has available for purchase these days. I will say my wife, again, has a shirt from her shop, which she's really adored. Full vote of confidence from this household in terms of the quality and content of material over there. So go check out her store, support that. Yeah, so let's just get into the news for this week in Cloud City Gossip. Which basically isn't a whole lot because we're getting into the holiday season here. Things are starting to wind down for a lot of shops here. Basically, there's only a few things, which are a Skeleton Crew is continuing to release new episodes weekly on Disney Plus. So keep watching those and coming right back here to Force Ghost Conversations so that you can stay up to date with the themes and the speculation and just all the fun stuff that we're chatting about over here on a weekly basis. Additionally, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is out on Xbox platforms, and I've officially played an hour of the game so far, and boy, did I love it. I have loved every second of it. I was beaming from ear to ear with a big smile on my face. It is just a blast, and you could tell there was a lot of dedication put into the product and time and effort overall. I mean, frankly, an hour doesn't even get you into the story. Basically, it just really scratches the surface. Don't want to really spoil too much because we're going to have a full-on deep dive discussion into the game in the near future here. So yeah, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle coming soon to Force Ghost Conversations. And lastly, I don't know how I missed this story item here, but the trades are reporting that Jeremy Allen White, who is Emmy award-winning actor for The Bear and among many other things, has been cast to voice Rada the Hutt, aka Jabba the Hutt's son. You may remember him as Stinky from the Clone Wars movie back in 2008. To my knowledge, we haven't really seen Rata in anything else since then. Not very much a fan favorite character when it was released, but I think over the last 15 years or so, the character has become has had a resurgence, a bit of a cult following, if you will, as people come to embrace the 2008 Clone Wars film more and more. So just remember the trades. The Hollywood, I don't remember exactly which trade specifically put pen to paper on this one. But Lucasfilm has not confirmed or announced the casting yet, so take it with a slight grain of salt there. It may not happen, but I mean, that's just a wild story to begin with, so I have to at least acknowledge it at some point here, just because of, wow, that's something to head into the holiday season. So yeah, Jeremy Allen White voicing Rada the Hutt, or perhaps doing a bit more. Maybe there's a mocap sequence of it as well. I don't know. There's a lot coming in the man. Speaking of which, sorry, and when I say cast to play Rada the Hutt, it is going to be in the course of the upcoming film, The Mandalorian and Grogu, which will be coming out in theaters in 2026. So stay on the lookout for that as we get more details and information. Of course, we'll be right here at Force Ghost Conversations to cover the news and announcements and whatever else may come from Lucasfilm and the various films and properties under its heading. So that, folks, is all the news that I had for this week's Cloud City Gossip episode. Full spoiler warning ahead for our discussion on Skeleton Crew episode 4. Can't say I remember no and oh yeah, I say that a lot in this episode, especially in pirate accent. So get ready for that. If you haven't seen the episode, go watch it on Disney Plus, and then come right back to this point in the episode. And get ready to have a full on breakdown discussion about everything in this realm. Of course, if you want to continue the conversation with us too before we head into that main topic discussion here, again, we're available on all social media platforms: Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Instagram. I think I might have said already, but hey, we're there again. We're also still on X, but our reduced capacity on there moving forward has been noted. So make sure you follow us on the other sites, as we want to keep continuing to grow the seats around the proverbial campfire that is Force Ghost Conversations. So thanks again for everybody for listening. And on the other side of the short break, we'll be back with our discussion with Tiara, crafting on Ilum, about episode 4 from Skeleton Crew. All right, everybody, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. What an amazing episode of Skeleton Crew we had this week. Somehow we are halfway done with the series. I can't even believe that I'm saying that. I feel like it was just yesterday that episodes 1 and 2 dropped, but somehow we have made it this far. We are through at 4 episodes in it, and episode 4 is titled Can't Say I Remember No Attin, in my best SM33 impersonation here. But of course, I can't be alone to chat about this fantastic episode. I have technically not a first timer on the podcast. Kind of, we'll explain this in a second here, but first time officially on the podcast in a long form discussion format. I have, of course, Tiara, aka Crafting on Ilum. You can find her on many social media sites, which we'll plug at some point in the episode, of course, and her store too. But Tiara, welcome to Force Ghost Conversations, and how are you doing?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing all right. Just getting over a cold, so excuse like the mild congestion voice and slight sniffles here and there.
Oh, that's totally fine. I bet you the cold sniffles will make for an excellent pirate accent if we start divulging into our best. Can't say I remember no Attin in
Yeah.
this episode as many. I mean, that should just be the running gag of this episode. We should say it as many. How many times can
Yeah.
we into one episode, as much as SM33 was jibber jabbering about it throughout the episode here.
Yeah.
But again, it's a pleasure to have you on the show, listeners. If you haven't checked out our Ice Triple C kind of recap episode, Tiara was on there because we did have a chance to meet up at the convention, and when there's a little quick little on the floor audio recording that we did there. So thanks again for that, and
Yeah.
really happy to have you back on the show here. And that's where I want to start before we get into episode 4 here. I want to kind of get your level of anticipation coming into Skeleton Crew. So basically, like, what was your hype, your anticipation? How much were you looking forward to this show? So let's start with that right now. How excited were you for Skeleton Crew when you first heard about it, and then you saw that first episode?
Yeah, I mean, it was announced back at the Anaheim convention, right? Or no, it was the London
It was
celebration,
officially
right?
announced in Anaheim,
In Anaheim.
and then there
Okay.
were just
Okay.
some, like, rumblings like, "Oh, John Watts may be doing something in Star Wars," before that.
Yeah, so it's been around for, the last 2 years or so or whatnot, so it's been in whispers, and we didn't get anything, like, concrete until a couple months ago, probably, like, what, like, 4 months ago?
August of D23 was when the first trailer dropped, and just really anything aside from Jude Law with a bunch of kids in Star Wars was all we had going for it.
Yeah, so pretty random at first. I was just kinda like, "Alright, like, we just gotta wait until we get a little bit more information," and then when we got that, like, snippet of, Wim and Neil with their, like, bikes,
Mhm.
that's when everyone started speculating, and we kind of got a little bit more information that it was supposed to be, like it felt like an '80s film, kind of like a
Yeah.
Stranger Things thing, and so at that time, I was getting excited because I was like, "This seems pretty fresh,"
Mhm.
um and I'm excited for something new. Still really random, didn't have a whole lot of opinions at that time.
Yeah.
And then we started getting like trailers almost every single day, like this past month or previous month. And I really liked seeing the director's like passion as they were like talking
Mhm.
about like what went into filmmaking and whatnot. So that's when I started getting excited because I grew up with like 80s, 70s films with my dad,
Mhm.
mostly martial art films like Bruce Lee films and whatnot. But yeah, so that's when I started getting excited because I like that era because that's what I grew up with. Even though I'm much
Yeah.
younger than the audience that actually grew up with it as those movies were coming out,
Yeah.
I still felt that excitement.
But that's okay because it doesn't matter. That's the way how I always look at it, especially when someone's like, "You're watching an older film," and I was like, "It's not an old film to like until you've seen it for the
Right.
first time. It's still a new film,
Right.
technically."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, like, I'm glad that you have this kind of foundation and watching these kind of stories that have inspired it. And that's kind of where my next question leads to here is because they've in the lead up to the show, they were really describing it as this like Amblin like adventure. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And I've just
Mhm.
found it fascinating that that's how they describe like that's the avenue that they went in order to market and advertise this movie in the lead up to it, or not this movie, but the series in the lead up to it. And you kind of hinted this a little bit here, but I want to delve into that a little bit further because I'm interested because entry points are a very interesting way into understanding a person and their background and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So when they say Amblin like adventure, what does that mean to you? What does that evoke for you? And floor's all yours. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of fall into the majority where we kind of went with like Goonies vibes and
Hmm.
like that kind of aesthetic or a film. So that's what that fell into for me. And again, that was just one of the many like 70s, 80s movies that I watched with my dad as I was
Yeah.
growing up because it was movies he grew up with.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally. And this series has definitely lived up to that hype so far. I think
Yeah.
like, that was the thing on the top of my head. I was like, okay, will it feel like a Goonies? Will it feel like E.T.? Will it feel like a little bit of
Yeah.
Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah.
And so far it's, throwing a dart against the wall. It's hit bullseye center for all that, which I
Yeah.
think is awesome. They definitely didn't mislead the audience to this point. I think when you've kind of had it in such a clear cut way of describing it that is aligned with it, people don't feel like they were misled in a
Yeah.
way when they hit play. They're like, okay, this is what it's gonna be, and I expect it to be that.
Right. Yeah.
So before this week's episode, at least from what I saw, the chatter on the internet was that it was going to be a very Neil focused special episode. Why do you think this character has captured the hearts of Star Wars fandom?
I mean, first off, he's a super cute looking character, you know, he had
Mhm.
they acknowledged the inspo was from Max Rebo from Return of the
Mhm.
Jedi, and people love that character, not like large population loves that character, but there's an appreciation for him, um, and then just his overall character, it's just super, like, cute and sweet, and this episode and we'll talk more, I'm sure, but he just has, like, that pure, like, childlike
Mhm.
type of soul,
Mhm.
and so I think that's why a lot of people are, like, captured by him because he's just so pure, so sweet.
Yeah, there's like this childlike innocence in him
Yeah,
that I think is
yeah,
so special. And the character that immediately comes to my mind when I'm thinking of what else is there to compare Neil to and
mhm,
why does he work so much for us,
mhm,
um, is Winnie the Pooh.
mm,
I think like just that innocence, that clear cut cuteness too,
yeah,
it works. They somehow found that blend of a character that just hits just somehow just by looking at him goes right into the heart and goes, "All right,
yeah,
perfect." Like at ET, you need to sit with him for a couple of minutes in order for him to
yeah,
break into your heart, and once he's there, he's never leaving.
right,
But with Neil, you're like, "Oh, this like elephant little kid that is so pure of heart where he's like, "Oh, I think people should just stop fighting.
yeah,
Why can't you just say you're sorry?" And then just has this
yeah,
kind of whimsical humor around
yeah,
him too. It just leads to this like awesome dynamic between the group. Like, he is the heart of it. He is the heart of the skeleton crew. He's the heart of this mission and journey. Like, I want to, yeah, I'm with him too. I want to go home at a certain point, and
Yeah,
I don't blame everybody.
yeah.
Yeah, this character is just, it just keeps getting better and better as time goes on.
Yeah, he's, like, kind of like a Bambi character, like a
Mm,
baby deer, like, brand new to
mm.
the world, curious. He's honest too, it's not like a blunt type of, like, communication. He's just, like, honest about his feelings, and, like, that's pretty pure as well,
Yeah,
as a kid, because kids are blunt. Kids will tell you as it is. So,
they don't hold back. I'll tell you.
yeah, but he embodies, like, a nicety of that, a nice version of that.
Yeah, there's just a charm to hit the way, I guess it's both the writing of the character and the interpretation of it from, the child actor. Of course, I can't remember his name off the top of my head,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
just the mix of that just seems to work on every level at this point. And, like, Neil Nation was already a thing before,
Yeah.
but, with each passing episode, and particularly this last one here, it's skyrocketed. His stock is through the roof,
Yeah. Yeah. I
you
like
know?
that you brought up the child actor because I've seen a couple of interviews and, like, I have a friend, Jack over at, Explore the Forest, and he
Mhm.
attended, like, the London premiere, like, that little interview that they did, and
Mm.
like, the child actor is just so pure of heart too, like, he was
Yeah.
super excited to be there, super engaged with the audience, and that transferred into this character, I believe.
I think that's spectacular, and I'm glad that, we it's not it's not a requisite for a person to be similar
Yeah,
to the character that they are, but as a
yeah,
fandom, we like when that happens, right? We
right.
like when Mark Hamill is like Luke Skywalker. It just works. Like, we want to see ourselves in them, and when we
Mhm.
see the actor being like them, it, like, gives us permission in a way to, like, accept that into our hearts as well too.
Yeah, yeah.
Um so I think this episode does a lot for, like, expanding upon, like, the quote unquote wisdom of Neil in a way.
Mm, mhm.
What do you think about that kind of statement overall? Like, where is Neil most wise in the many things that he said over the course of this episode? What stood out to you the most? And how did he, just get locked into your heart and pulling those strings as this episode was going along?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, like, an entryway was when he offered those kiddos his food, like, I'm sure he's hungry, like,
That
we've
was so
heard his
sweet,
stomach
wasn't it?
growl. Yeah, we've heard his stomach growl on the ship, I'm sure he's really hungry. So, for him to, like, offer and, like, be selfless like that, that was super sweet, but the
Mhm.
comment or, like, statement that he made, to I forget the girl's name,
Hannah.
Hannah, he said something like, "Do you think it will ever end, like, this constant fighting?" And, like, that to
Mhm.
me, like, that analysis about their overall situation, they've been there, what, for, like, 5 minutes, and he can already be
Yeah.
like, "This constant fighting between you guys, violence just creates more violence, and, like, you should just apologize." Like, his kid way of saying is, like, "You should just apologize and make
Yeah.
peace and whatnot." So that particular statement, because like, even adults, I think, like, looking at history, even adults can't even recognize that, and for this, sci-fi character, kiddo, to be able to do that, that was pretty impactful.
And almost immediately too, like, he just
Mhm.
rejects what this planet stands for and
Yeah.
everything that it exists as. Um, Whereas, Hana is like, this is how it's always been. It's never gonna
Mhm,
change. Like, we're
mhm.
gonna always. I will grow up to take over the clan Troik, and I will have the Hattons, and maybe there are other clans too on this planet. That we're just in constant tribal warfare against each other. We need to steal our Eopes. They need to. They're going to steal other things from us. Just going to keep constantly fighting each other until there is either none of us left, or we've overtaken their clan. Just lots of violence henceforth from today, tomorrow, 2 weeks from now. It's just a constant cycle that they're not going to break out of. But Neil is
Right.
immediately like, no, 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 there's another path. I live it. I live peacefully, and it's nice. It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Aside from when my brother breaks my trunk, but you know, I like how, even for a person that like Hannah, that has grown up in this lifestyle, it's seemingly all she's ever known,
Mhm,
at Achrann.
mhm.
Um, she He's immediately able to break that hard exterior that she has, that's been hardened by battle, and just this harsh living lifestyle that she's lived in, he's immediately able to break through that with kindness and a little bit of whimsical humor. And it's like, where's Neil in our real world? Like we could use a
Right.
Neil like today. Go to go to the UN, go to other government,
Yeah,
and just like get us to solve all the world problems. Like tell it to us in a quick 2 to 3 sentence formatted way to be like, I think you guys just need to just say you're sorry
right.
and just be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah, simple as that. Super wise.
Like, come on, Neil. This is a um it's I listened to a and this is why I think of Neil as Winnie the Pooh is when I found this book in like 2019 that was like the Universal Tao of Winnie the Pooh, and then pulling from Taoism and various other Eastern philosophies
Mm,
for why Winnie the Pooh just works as a
mhm,
character, like
mhm.
why he's like he's so kind and he's giving and he's thoughtless in the way that he's very much like what a Jedi should be in the purest
Yeah,
form. And I'm like,
yeah,
is Neil like the greatest example of what a Jedi should be?
right,
I
right.
honestly think so.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's pretty centered, like, he's not very I mean, like, not necessarily influenced because he just like, he loves his friend Wim, right? So he kinda just
Mhm.
goes along with whatever Wim wants to do because he loves his friend, but, like, he's
Yeah.
pretty, like, steady in, like, his beliefs and feelings and thoughts and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's honest too. Like
Yeah,
like you mentioned earlier, like he's very upfront about, "I don't like
yeah,
this fighting, but I'm also afraid to fight." Like that
yeah,
also kind of is into it too. He's like, "Not that I'm not against it again a way, but like I kinda am because I'm also a little afraid of it too."
yeah, yeah,
Which I think is a natural thing to admit,
yeah,
especially a person that has never really been exposed to those types of environments before.
right.
But I think, yeah, and the fact that Hannah at the end has that wonderful uh, speech back to him, basically, where she's
Mhm.
like, you think it's a weakness, but your kindness is actually kind of like your strength. It
Yeah,
works for you, and it's great, and you're like a salt of the earth kind of person. Like you make it
yeah,
better everywhere you go,
yeah.
which I think is like it's just being authentic. It's being a good person. It's being the best in the situation that you can be, and
Mhm.
being kind and helping others where you can. And that's what Neil does. He just goes around spreading the good word. Where
Yeah.
come on, Neil, come down to earth.
And some might, like, see it as, like, because in the beginning, you kinda see him or at least I did, as, like, a rule follower, but then
Hmm.
as the story has progressed, it's like, while he may be a rule follower, it's because he likes to keep the peace and, like, he
Yeah,
doesn't, like, wanna create turbulent waves, with anyone, but, like, naturally, he's pretty just, like, chill, pretty laid back.
he just wants to play with his action figures and don't mess with his protractor. He'll get
Yeah.
he'll
Yeah.
get he'll get up in he'll get up in a tissy fit about it, and
Yeah.
and break his own trunk.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Oh, geez. Well, Neil just continues to amaze, and I can't wait to see where he goes in the rest of the series, of course. But I want to start kind of where this episode begins, which is leading off from where last episode was, where
Mhm.
Kim, the wonderful owl-like cat character,
Yeah.
gives them the coordinates. What they thought was to at Attin, but alas, the coordinates take them to another remote planet that is called at Achrann instead. So, for the group, the skeleton crew overall, what do you think, or how do you think that seeing this type of world will impact the kids?
Yeah, I think in a pretty big way it'll impact them because I mean they came from this utopia planet, they have their rules and like no one is exposed to like any type of negativity. I mean like there's
Hmm.
the slight school bullies, but like other than that their
Yeah.
lives are pretty peaceful. So like this is a complete like 180 from the way that they live. So I think it's going to shake their worldview in a pretty big way and then we see that breakdown at the very end or towards the end of the episode between Wim and Fern. Like we
Hmm.
see her breakdown and
Mm.
like, I'm sure she's exhausted from making these like
Yeah.
big adult decisions, but also I'm sure like that fear that the world like this world or planet that they're on like took a toll on her. So
Hmm.
I mean we see her worldview change. I can't speak for like KB because she's kind of emotionless at this
Yeah,
point.
sometime, yeah.
Yeah, so, kind of, she still shows emotions here and there, and then, I mean, for Neil, like, he didn't agree with it, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty, like, blown away, like, "Hey, like,
Mhm.
this isn't how you're supposed to live," like, he kind of says that or
Yeah.
alludes to that, and for Wim too, I mean, he's still putting on a brave face, but I'm sure he's, like, intrigued in some way, some sort, about how they're living, like, why he kinda, like, asks all the questions at first, like, they get to the planet,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Oh, like, they have this is what we have back on our planet, and, like, why do they have this?" You know, like, he asks those questions, so I think he's more curious at this point about it.
Yeah, he is a bit more on, like, the well, I think he's also like, "Anywhere but home is good enough for me. I don't care
Right.
if it's a war-torn planet. I'll
Yeah.
take it."
Yeah.
But I think for the other 3 at least, as you alluded to, like, it does have some impacting effects, especially like you said with Fern. I think she's like I don't know if she's kinda just feeling, like you said, the weight of making so many decisions, being the captain, being and kind of facing the reality of what it is to be a kind of like captain, having to make decisions, being
Yeah.
brave, being in the front when everyone's
Yes.
asking you, "What do we do?"
Right.
Like, that takes a toll on a person, and it did it
Yeah.
obviously for her at the end here because um, they don't know Jod Nanawoods on the other end of that fog there,
Right.
and they're just kind of like walking out in no man's
Yeah.
land, and who knows what could be coming? A whole horde of Hatton, the other clan, could be steamrolling right ahead with a bunch of guns and weapons. Like it's all fun and games when you're practicing and shooting at bottles and other stuff for target practice, but then when you're actually in the middle of a war situation, it's a bit of a different scenario.
Yeah, and I don't know the time frame that like, from when they first left their planet till now, but,
Hmm.
like, for me, it feels like 3 days maybe for them, so I think
Sure.
that's a lot for a kid to go through within 3 days and have that complete 180 spin on their worldview, and so, in addition, Fern's making all these decisions, so, like, it makes sense for her to break down, I think, at this point, and especially it is
Yeah.
about halfway of the season, so, like, a breakdown is kind of expected at this point as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It was definitely bound to happen for at least one of the group, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, when you're dubbed the leader, I think you're most likely to experience something like that.
Yeah.
So I will say, like them being exposed to like the pirate kind of hub
Mhm.
in episode 2
Mhm.
was a bit of a culture shock, I will say,
Yeah.
that kind of being their first experience outside, but there was really nothing that resembled their home planet at
Mhm.
when they were there. So there was still that kind of degree of separation and newness.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then seeing this where it's literally like a carbon copy of their planet and then just seeing it desolation, war torn. They're like, this isn't right. I mean, Neil obviously had that whole like almost regurgitation of this isn't this. We gotta get out of here. This is
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but I can only imagine what like first off, you're leaving your home, and then and then you imagine this is basically them like landing back at home, and then everything that they knew before has changed on its own end.
Yeah.
The school is now a place where there's a clan training for military operations. The supervisor's tower is a it's probably actually pretty similar to the one on their planet, but we'll get into that maybe later.
Yeah.
It's a an off limits kind of space on this
Mhm.
planet.
Mhm.
The uh, all they can point out to where everything is at, right? Where Neil is like, "That's where my mom works, and I'll get a job one day too." And
Right.
it's
Exact
almost like they're
layout.
they're glorifying the suburbia of it all.
Mhm.
In a weird way, it's like if any town has like a quote unquote poorer section, right, and you live in the suburbs, and it's like, oh, let's take a field trip to see what people in poorer situations live like, right? It's like volunteering at the local soup kitchen for a
Yeah.
night to then experience like, oh, this isn't great. We should, we should do something about helping people in these types of situations. I hope that
Mhm.
that has like that kind of effect on these kids, that when they go back home they're like, there is so much more out there, we shouldn't be so trapped by this barrier here, and we can do a lot to help people. I
Yeah.
mean, heck, Neil is offering up his home to
Yeah.
to Hannah at the end of this thing. He's like, come with us, and I thought, I'm surprised she didn't take up the offer, to be honest. Like, come on, join the crew.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, like, if they go back and they're like, "Did you know that there's, like, all these other planets out
Mhm.
there and, like, all these people and, like, they're struggling and this is actually how the galaxy is, it's not how we live." And I'm wondering how the parents' response will be to that, if they're gonna be like, "No, like, you're seeing things, you were hallucinating out there, like, this is life,
Yeah,
this is how it's supposed to be." Or if they, like, expose, what they've been doing, or if the parents even know, like, the depths of, like, the history of their planet, you know? So, like, we have all these questions, but I'm sure the kids will be like, "Hey, we saw all of this, like, what are we gonna do about it?"
right.
Especially Neil and Wim, I think they would be the first to do that.
Yeah. I wonder, because that'll be, I mean, this kinda leads into my next question here a little bit here too,
Mhm,
but,
mhm.
the concept of how kids are treated on this planet is vastly different, right? Kids
Right.
are kind of treated as equals to adults. It doesn't matter your age. But I think that's kind of out of a necessity because they're warriors
Mhm,
nonetheless, right? It
mhm,
doesn't matter who's firing the gun. It just matters that someone is firing the gun against the other clan members. It's a
mhm,
status of survival or out of necessity that kids are elevated to this type of position.
mhm.
But like you were saying, I wonder if when they return back eventually to Adden, hopefully they do one day, um, that they tell their parents about this. Like, I wonder if the parents may just kind of like, be like, "Oh, that's nice," and then pat them on the head and then
Right.
say like, "Please just return back to school. Like, none
Yeah.
of this matters. You just went on an adventure. Hopefully, you're not in trouble too much." And maybe just like diminish their experience in some
Mhm,
ways.
mhm.
Do you have any thoughts on perhaps how that may be a reality or affect them? I think.
Well, I mean, if they're just like, "All right, well, you had this adventure, that's cool," and then go back to school, I'm sure they're not gonna be able to focus on school, like, there's
Hmm.
so many more things going on in the galaxy, and I'm
Yeah.
sure they're gonna, like, wanna tell their other friends, or, like, maybe they make, I'm losing words, but they're gonna make, like, a spectacle. They're gonna stand and
Oh, I
make,
think
like,
they
a
will.
speech,
Yeah, those
of
droids
of
won't
what's
like it.
going on. Yeah, and then that creates, like, kind of, like, their own planet civil war, not, like, as, like, the
Sure,
amount of
sure.
violence as this
Or at least an
planet, but,
uprising,
like,
a rebellion of some sort.
yeah, yeah, so I'm thinking that's the way it's gonna go, if it goes that way where the parents are like, "Just go back to
Mhm,
school, everything's fine."
mhm.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
fall in line, accept the
yeah,
situation, don't question it.
yeah. Yeah, they're not gonna be able to go back to normalcy after this, after everything that they've seen.
There is no way, and I hope that as we saw the parents in the last episode kind of sitting around the table, drinking coffee and
Yeah.
worrying about their kids, that I
Mhm.
hope that this experience will make them question the system as well, so that hopefully
Mhm.
the kids just don't return home and then they're told to go back to school and forget everything that happened and move on.
Yeah.
This could lead to major repercussions for Attin, and I hope it
Mhm.
does because it
Mhm.
seems like that's the whole mystery of this thing. There are so many of these great work planets that have been lost or destroyed, quote unquote destroyed, which I think is
Yeah.
interesting that we kind of see an example of what that means. It's not like in the Alderaan sense where they were blown up because they didn't have that kind of
Right.
technology. I'm really curious how at Achrann this became this, how this happened, um, which maybe we'll get that story in another day. Um, but it for whatever reason, that Attin was left alone to prosper as it is, and for whatever reason, it's still isolated from the grand Re- New Republic Empire. It was isolated from all that,
Yeah.
um, and once they start giving out pieces of information about like, oh yeah, Alderaan doesn't exist. Remember, like that we learned about it in school here. There's this thing called
Mhm.
the Empire. Maybe that'll actually be a thing that they learn about,
Yeah.
and then telling everybody else about it. Um,
Yeah.
I just got to think like this is going to lead to some major things, and once they're able to say like, oh, I saw a 1-to-1 carbon copy of this on another planet. I've been
Yeah.
inside the supervisor's tower somewhere
Yeah.
else. It has coordinates to all these other things like who's there, who's the supervisor. We saw perhaps a monument to who was maybe the supervisor of this
Mhm.
planet.
Mhm.
Captain No Head, I think was what they described.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
um, you know, uh, who is the supervisor over on that Adam? I think it's going to lead to a lot of questions, and I hope if things go accordingly the way I want them to, there's going to be a lot more people asking questions along the way and being like, "Hey, what's the deal here?"
Yeah, when I was watching the episode, I was kind of getting, and a friend of mine on, Beyond the Dune Sea, he had, like had a good reference, but when I was watching it, I was like, "I wonder if these, like, planets were all practice planets, and then
Mm.
and was, like, the final, like, utopia, it was successful."
Mm.
But, over at Beyond the Dune Sea, one of them had mentioned, like, Marvel in Guardians of the Galaxy and how, Quill's father,
Mhm.
was trying to make, like, a planet for, like, himself or however that went, but,
Mhm.
like, he had, like, failed planets before, and so I'm
Sure.
wondering if all of these other planets were, like,
Mm.
failed planets like that. That was one thought, or somehow they were all good planets and the other ones were found and this planet, like, went into hiding, once those planets were
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
destroyed or, you know,
Ooh, that's an interesting theory. Like, it was out of
faded.
defense. Like, the supervisor
Yeah,
is like, "I will take this on for everybody. I will shut us off from
yeah,
the rest of the world. We will just live as we
yeah,
are." Huh,
yeah.
interesting.
So those are my 2 theories at the moment, but, like, I don't have enough information. I think the murals will definitely provide that, as we
Oh my
continue on.
gosh. Yeah,
I
ugh.
know, I know.
The mural gives everything and nothing at the same time. Like, it
Yeah.
it is so fascinating, and, as soon as I
Mhm.
saw it in that first episode, I was like, "I gotta pause it. What
Yeah,
what could it tell us about anything here?"
yeah.
Uh, and then having paused it and analyzing it, and I saw people on the internet have, like, taken pictures of it, screenshots,
Mhm,
and I've zoomed
mhm.
in on it, and I'm like, "I really don't know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
Maybe this doesn't make any sense." Hopefully someone is able to dissect it one day. I'm glad that
Yeah, the
someone took the time to, like, for, Whim's, like, datapad,
Yes, the
stories.
stories.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
someone did all the translations
Translated
of
it,
all that, and I
yeah.
thought, "Oh, that was good." I'm glad someone did that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would've been too lazy to do I would've been curious, but too lazy to, like, flip through and do it on my own. But for the mural, what I was noticing, and other people I think were speculating as well, that the, like, species that were on the
Mhm.
mural are, like, the species that we see on their planet because
Mm.
Neil I forget which one of them, I think it was Neil, was like, "Whoa, look at all these aliens," and it's like, "Well, Neil, you're an alien, and, like, you have other aliens
Mhm.
on your
Mhm.
planet, like, why is this so different?" And so I'm wondering if, like, these are just normal aliens, you're right? Like, the
Mhm.
people that we see in the murals are like there are just all the aliens in the world to them, to their knowledge until, they have this adventure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a great question. Who knows when they were cut off, right?
Yeah.
Or hypers. We know that they were tied to the old Republic, not
Mhm,
the old Republic, but like the Republic before the Empire, and
mhm.
definitely at some point the High Republic, I'd imagine, just based off of the nomenclature of the
Right,
great works and all that stuff.
right.
Um, so there's about a 200-year gap potentially from
Yeah.
High Republic to events of Phantom Menace, where
Mhm,
they may have been toying with being isolated at that point. But
mhm, mhm.
we were kind of nailing it down to it somewhere around there that
Right.
these treasures of the old Republic, as they called them, have disappeared. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, let the speculation run rampant. I like where your theories are going here on this one.
Yeah, I've had a full head of those are most the major theories so
Yeah.
far. Everything is just kinda, like, minor and then, like, I'm hoping to see Hondo. I know this is, like, super random, like,
Oh.
tangent, but, like, I'm really, really hoping to see him. It just makes sense for him to appear from a
Hmm.
marketing standpoint, and also, like, they said that going into this show, you didn't have to, like, know too much about Star Wars to be able to
Hmm.
watch it, and then it's also, like, there's a ton of Easter eggs for, like, us, hardcore fans and
Sure.
whatnot. But, like, Hondo, he's at Galaxy's Edge, so, like, people who have been to Galaxy's Edge and to have him incorporated and make him a live action character, like, it just makes sense to me. That's another big one that I'd really love to see.
Yeah, I'm all for the Hondo train.
Yeah.
I'm all for it, and I will second that and say I think they're lying to us, and I think that Stinky Rod of the Hut will appear in this now that he's been kind of cast in the Mandalorian and Grogu, so he's around this time frame, and
Yeah,
why
that's
not show
true.
him a little earlier?
Yeah.
Tease the fans, get us all ready for the next coming of Jabba's son.
Yeah.
I think it's due time. Anywho, back to can't say I remember Noah Attin.
Yeah.
Um, After reaching the Fallen Sanctum, the group discovers that the coordinates to at Attin have been removed. And in fact, the audience then learns that it was actually SM-33 under direction from his former captain to block all memories of at Attin and to essentially rip apart any person who tries to override the memory in the future. So, what was your reaction when SM-33 ultimately turned on Fern and the rest of the skeleton crew at the end of the episode?
Yeah, I think it was, a reminder that he's kind of a scary droid, right? Like,
Hmm.
so far, he's been pretty pleasant, and, like, I just saw him more as a protector for these kiddos, um, but, like, when his programming went into effect, he got pretty scary,
Yeah.
and also just kind of reflects, like, the crew that he was with before, like, how a tendency to
Hmm.
violence or, like, not evil, but just, like, a l more on the violent side because they were pirates, like, how much that is
Right.
embedded into his programming because of who he was with before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you. So, I was at D23 this year, and they had the skeleton crew, not the crew, but like the villains, quote unquote,
Mhm.
up as a display, all the costumes. And
Right.
SM-33 was actually one included there,
Yeah.
amongst that group with
Yeah.
Brutus and Vane and some of the others. And I don't know if that means anything for the the lingering of the
Right.
series, how that goes on.
Right.
If that was just they wanted to put the character stand in at some point and they didn't have a better place to do it, or if that
Right.
has actually any meaning to this, I don't know. We'll find out. But I will tell you, I am 6 feet tall,
Mhm.
and he was at least 7 feet tall. So I can imagine for these kids who are probably half my size,
Yeah.
probably 3.5 feet, 4 feet, somewhere in there in that
Yeah.
range. Absolutely terrifying. I
Yeah.
would be going nuts if
Yeah.
the thing that I thought probably protected me the most, as they
Mhm.
saw throughout the course of this series so far,
Mhm. Yeah.
was actually going full throttle at us.
Yeah.
And I don't blame Neil for passing out.
Yeah.
like like,
Yeah.
I if that thing came running full bore at me and I didn't have anything except for like a few rocks in my hand to throw at
Right.
it. I,
Yeah.
I don't I just can't imagine what would happen. Uh, we forget how like R2 and 3PO being like the foundation, and BB-8 for a lot of us are
Mhm.
um, good, kind droids, right?
Yeah.
K2SO is also a kind droid, but if he had his Imperial programming still, and as we see in Rogue One, he can throw it down like anybody. He
Yeah.
could be ripping arms out of sockets if he really wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think SM-33 kind of is in the same mold in some ways as the K2 model.
Yeah.
And yeah, just be to be told start ripping arms apart. To hear that, I would be like, "What do you mean? No,
Yeah.
I'm the captain. I don't
Yeah.
know how is the captain's note from a captain ago that's gone that
Mhm.
you've noted is gone still overrides current captain."
Right. Yeah, and this whole time they thought that they were in control of Smee, and,
Yeah,
like, to have that control be lost, like, completely overrided for Fern, I'm sure as, like, the leader and captain was pretty terrifying too.
absolutely, absolutely. And then that's like the complete 180 of it all. I would say is that like they thought they could trust Smee the most. He's
Mhm.
doing the babysitting of
Yeah,
Jod and Alwood. He even
yeah,
initiates babysitting protocol,
yeah,
um, which I thought was hysterical.
yeah,
And Jod and Alwood is probably the one that they least trust. They're like, get out of the cockpit. No adults in the cockpit.
yeah,
He's being watched, and then he steals the coins from them, the
mhm,
credits, and then uses that
mhm,
to buy them. And they kind of let that go,
yeah,
kind of pass it over, and then he's the one that turns off SM-33.
mhm,
So he like starts slowly gaining their trust, and I don't know if that
right,
is a long term game because he kind of believes now that Attin has probably some treasure at this point,
mhm,
and he's like,
mhm,
if I get in the kids' good graces, maybe I'll get some of that treasure at the end of the
yeah,
tunnel.
yeah.
Um, but it's interesting that the dynamics are slowly starting to shift for this crew here, and I wonder what the long term effects of SM-33's kind of betrayal in this sense is going to have for the kids, because who's to say they turn him back on again, he doesn't go bananas again.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that Jod and KB will kind of brainstorm together to try and figure out
Hmm.
how to override it and like look in his programming because like he has all this knowledge on all the other planets. It kind of seems like
Yeah.
from his initial visit with his previous
Hmm.
captain. So like I assume that's kind of like the next step, but I mean, if they fail at that, well,
Yeah.
we don't know how that's gonna go.
I mean, we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, do you have any theories or speculation on who the original captain might have been?
I initially, like, just something that passed through my mind real quick was Hondo, but then I was
Mhm.
like, he's not I don't think he would be old enough to be
Mhm.
the captain.
Mhm.
Um, other than that, I truly do not know who it would be because, like you were mentioning at D23, like, all the villains, and I'm like, "Well, was Jod?" Because Jod is Silvo
Mhm.
amongst his other aliases,
Crimson Jack, yep.
yeah, so, like, what was Crimson Jack or Silvo, like, his previous captain? And, like, we're just not I don't know, I don't know how that connection would be, but other than those 2, I have no theories. What
Mhm.
about
Mhm.
you? Do you have anything?
So I'm gonna throw a wild one out there, and I thought about it today here. And my wild prediction, speculation, theory is that Wim's mom was the captain.
Ah, I see, okay. Yeah,
Now that she's gone, perhaps that was
interesting.
like maybe again, I don't know. Maybe she was the one going up and down and exploring at Attin, and that's she found a family, and
Yeah.
that's how. And then she passes. She whatever gets the ship stuck in the fields of at Attin, and that's it. But I don't know, purely speculation, folks. It could mean nothing, could mean everything. But that's where my brain is kind of like leaning. Like, oh, that'd be an interesting thing for Wim, I think, to then recognize like, oh, I belong to something more than just the people of Attin. I am more than just an analyst, potentially.
That's so interesting. So, like, you say Friend's mom, and now I'm kind of thinking about Wendell, Wim's dad, because, like, when they were having that conversation in their living room or whatever, like, all of them were deep in conversation or
Hmm.
argument, and
Hmm.
Wendell was just kind of, like, zoning out, and
Yeah.
so now I'm wondering, like, maybe he was the captain, maybe, like, when
He
he
could
got to
be.
that planet, his, like, memory was kind of wiped, like, of
Hmm.
his life before, and now he's kinda remembering, and then I'm thinking,
Mm.
like, Wim's
Mm.
mom isn't there, so, like, did Wim's mom, like is there, like, a fake story made up where she didn't
Yeah,
actually
that's what I'm
die, she just,
saying.
like, left the planet? Like, oh, man. We're
It
killing
could
it
be
with the
there.
theories.
It
Yeah,
could be there. I mean,
yeah.
Neil. I mean, his parents could be in on it. Who's to say? They all could be a part of this grand
Yeah,
scheme.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Again, we're only halfway through this thing, so perhaps
yeah,
more details will come out in the next coming weeks here.
yeah,
But Tiara, I'm at my last question here,
yeah.
and we kind of talked a little bit how Neil and ultimately his arc through this episode is going from being afraid to then ultimately showing his bravery a little bit here. He throws the rocks at SM-33 to divert them from charging at the remainder of the skeleton crew, to then instead charge towards him. And in doing so, he gets all the attention. Jordan and Elwood leaps around, turns off SM-33, and then Neil, he kind of collapses on top of Neil in a very awkward position,
Mhm.
and as such, Neil then passes out, as we said, like rightfully any person probably would, given the circumstances.
Yeah.
So this episode does end kind of on a cliffhanger. We
Mhm.
don't know about Neil. Is that the end of Neil? That'd be the saddest thing ever. I hope they don't do that. But knowing all how this episode ends, and knowing that we basically know nothing for next week. What do you think happens next?
Yeah, I have 2 running possibilities. So, I don't know if I misheard, but during the episode, when Hannah, finds them and she's kind of explaining, like, their way of living, they
Mhm.
mentioned something about trading with, like, outside people, like,
Yeah,
there's a
for weapons
particular
and stuff.
product yeah, that they're trading for. So, I'm wondering if, like, a trade is going to happen while they're still here on this planet,
Mhm.
from this past episode, and then, like, some breakout happens, and then they're able to escape, like, the crew, and then, like, then
Mm.
they try and work on Smee. Second theory is I think Kim, the owl cat lady, gave them the coordinates, like, on purpose, so that way she could keep track of them, like, just in case she
Oh.
lost them, like, she gave it to on purpose, and then comes with the X-Wing pilot to try and, like,
Oh.
grab them, and that's, how we start, but We'll see.
I really like that second one.
Yeah,
That, Jod was like, "Don't trust Kim.
yeah,
We can't trust her. She'll stab you in the back." Now, that
right.
could be the stab in the back to quote unquote Crimson Jack,
Yeah,
as she referred to him, um,
yeah.
because she has no incentive to give them, knowing that Jack is a part of the group, or
Mhm,
John and Alwood is part of that group. She has no reason to give them the right coordinates, and
mhm.
if an X-wing crew is slowly behind them, just waiting to pick them up as they land there, now that could be an interesting way that they
Yeah,
go in the future here. I like that one a lot, and I also do like the who knows who's trading with this group. Is it,
mhm.
I don't know, maybe thinking speculatively out there, but we know there's the remnants of the Empire out
Right.
and about. We
Mhm.
know Thrawn, theoretically, if this is
Yes.
an after Ahsoka time frame, Thrawn is out
Right.
there on Dathomir with again, the remnants of the new Empire,
Mhm,
um, and the
mhm.
Project Necromancer group.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows if they're not secretly a part of it in some way, shape, or form, and there's actually more to these hidden planets than we're actually leading on here.
Yeah.
Just not just at Attin, but at Achrann, and they listed off all the other ones in this episode too. That could theoretically have some promise there. I think the most interesting thing for the next couple of episodes here is I don't think we have any like camera stills or like even snippets of footage
Mm.
from the
Mhm.
trailers for the next couple of episodes. I
Yeah.
think everything that was in the teasers and the official trailers and story trailers that released prior to the show coming out have all been shown so far.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single image and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see that yet. That's going to be something that happens probably in episode 6."
Mhm.
Uh, Nothing. The sky is frankly the limit here.
Yeah.
So I will add one more theory, perhaps, to the two
Yeah.
that you've proposed here, which is I think going to the episode 3 kind of cliffhanger with the pirate group, which is send bounty, put a bounty on them. Right? Who knows if
Mm.
there isn't
Mhm.
a potential
Mhm.
bounty hunter that catches their whim,
Yeah.
um, or they find Kim perhaps. She
Right.
tells them perhaps, "Hey, I sent them actually to at Akron. Here's the coordinates."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's actually a bounty hunter could be tracking them down, and who knows what that could actually, is it a Dengar, is it a Forlom, is it a Bosk, is it who knows?
Yeah.
Again, that opens up a lot of creativity. Now, again, they said, we're don't expect huge cameos in this, but Star Wars fans are going to expect, or at least
Yeah.
speculate. I will say, maybe
Yeah.
not expect, but they'll theorize, as we have done
Yeah.
here tonight, about
Yeah.
who it potentially could be. And I think
Mhm.
that there's a lot of opportunity for a lot of fun and interesting, wacky characters to appear in in the
Yeah.
next couple of episodes here, based off of that synopsis.
Yeah. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, we have chatted a lot about episode 4 from Skeleton Crew, titled, of course, again, "Can't Say I Remember No Attin." Yeah, I don't know. We got maybe about 6 or 7 of those in this episode. Um, I think rightfully so, of course. But Tiara, thank you so much for joining this episode here. Where can the folks find you online, and of course your store, Crafting on Ilum, if they want to A, buy something, and B, continue the conversation with you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I love joining in these conversations. And for where to find me, I am pretty much all over. I am on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. I do a wide variety of things, all Star Wars related on my Instagram mainly. That's where I'm mainly active. YouTube is more for like reaction videos and cons and some cosplay stuff, but I do have a shop where I do make merch, and I am slowly getting to Skeleton Crew designs and whatnot. So if
Heyo.
you're interested in any Star Wars designs, Skeleton Crew in the future as well, that is also on my Instagram, and I have my own page for my shop. It's called Craftin' on Ilum Shop, and then Instagram is just Craftin' on Ilum, and that is across all social media.
Wonderful, and a plug here, in my household, my wife actually has a Crafted on Ilum shirt,
Yes,
and
she
she loves
does.
it. She loves it. She wears it all the time, and it's like the best thing that she
Wonderful.
could find for her fandom to express
Aw,
herself as a Star Wars fan. So thank
I
you,
love that.
first and foremost, from the bottom of my heart, for allowing her to express herself in such a way,
Yeah.
and for having a wonderful platform that allows different people of all different types of entry points into fandom to
Yeah.
express themselves. So yes, crafting on Ilum, folks. Go find Tiara's shop, and support her. Tiara, you also are a wonderful cosplayer too. Any new cosplays in the works?
So right now I'm just trying to upgrade a lot of my existing cosplays because I do
Hmm.
have a lot of cosplays, and so I'm kind of OCD and I want to make them as in world and accurate as I
Sure.
can. In the future, once I get what I want to do at the moment finished, I do want to work on the Shmi Skywalker cosplay. I think that'd be really fun.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's a really underrated character and I love her so much. So that will be my next one, and I will be making that mostly from scratch. So
That is awesome.
yeah.
Definitely, I know you post updates to Instagram, so folks,
Yeah.
and other places too, of course. Folks, follow Chara on all the social platforms because like you post updates when you're doing like, oh, I'm working on shoulder pads or something like that, for example, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
painting today. I'm adding
Yeah.
this to the display. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and I think that's awesome because you're also very active on the con circuit too. And when you're traveling with this stuff, things happen, and
Yeah.
things get broken. You wear things
Yes.
out.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that it's like Disneyland in a way. It's never fully finished. You're just constantly
Yes.
upgrading and
Yep.
innovating and thinking through what's a way that I could be more comfortable in this, yet it's more
Yes.
accurate.
Yeah, more practical, but still,
Yeah, more practical because you're living in it for 8 plus hours in a day, and you're like, I got to eat in
Yep.
this thing too.
Yep. Yep, yep. At this last con that I just went to, side tangent, I had just recently worked on my, second sister bracers, like, I
Hmm.
actually got 3D printed ones instead of just, like, the flimsy plastic ones that I had, and I I popped a blood vessel in my arm
Oh
because
no!
it's so stiff to be able to lift my arm, and so I need to figure out something,
Oh
to
my
cushion
gosh.
it. So that is just one of many reasons why I need to constantly work on them to make them more practical and usable at these cons because they are very long days there.
Whew. Yes, yes. First
Yeah.
and foremost, take care of your own health.
Yeah.
Definitely need to be.
Yeah.
There's enough war in Star Wars. We don't need war in the real life and fighting the battle against cosplay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, of course, folks, we will include a link in the episode description for Crafting on Ilum Tiara's shop so you can access that. So be sure to check that out. And of course, we'll be back next week with a brand new episode chatting all things episode 5 from Skeleton Crew. And of course, that will be over it comes out Christmas Eve, so that'll
Yeah.
be cool. And we'll be chatting about that during the holiday week. So be on the lookout for that in your podcast feeds. And of course, we'll be back very soon. So until then, may the force be with you. Take care.